All right, coming up now, we have Brian Liles, who is one of my all-time favorite speakers and is one of the hosts of the Thank God It's Kubernetes show, which is live on YouTube every Friday. Fun fact about Brian, he has more compute power in his house than Amazon has in US East 2. Sit back, relax, and get ready to learn how to tame the previously thought to be untamable Kubernetes YAML. Take it away, Brian.
All right. This is quite an honor. It's always great to to go outside of your realm and talk about things that you're comfortable with in other places. So I'm Brian Liles, and I'm wearing a Wu-Tang shirt, a Wu-Tang peanut shirt. Pretty dope. And I'm going to talk about Kubernetes, YAML, and science equals sanity. But before I get into this, I'm going to set a few ground rules for this session. First of all, this is like an hour block. Hour long talks are too long. I set a timer on my desk for 45 minutes. We're going to hit that. The second thing is that, we're now in this, I don't know if it's post COVID, during COVID, intra COVID era where, we have a lot of online talks. And, that's cool. But, we should think about the medium. Let's think about different ways of presenting talks. I've been pretty vocal about these things on social media about let's rethink. So today I'm going to do a talk with no slides. It's going to be me, a terminal, and an editor, probably VS Code, and telling a story. And what I want to do here is I don't want to just tell you how I approach YAML. I actually want to tell you how I think about this whole space. Kubernetes, YAML, how do I process it? How do I deal with it today? And where do I think we're going? So let's get started. And like I said, this is all going to be screen share. So let me just go ahead and share my literal whole desktop here. So like I said, browser. Well, we got a browser because I like browsers. But we got a terminal. And the first thing I want to do, well, what about me? Who am I? I'm a senior staff engineer at VMware. I came to VMware via the Heptio acquisition, where I was working on YAML. And now that I am at VMware, what do I work on? Well, I work on helping other people manage their YAML, whether it be moving configurations from here to there, or actually just generating it. And I get to work with a lot of cool projects from a lot of cool vendors, whether it be us or others. But just to show you that this is really no slides, and I want to show you who I am, I'm just going to go to Google and Google myself. So let's see. Oh, look, first link. According to Google, I'm a joy slayer. I prefer justice over civility. That's very important. I write my curses in cursive, which means that no matter how bad I sound, it's always going to be very fancy. And then the last piece here, listen to me now, believe me later on. This is a quote that I actually live my life on. And shout out to the first person who can tweet me with where this quote came from. And let's be honest here. Who said it? What album? And maybe there'll be a prize. Probably not, but it's still pretty cool that people know random hip hop quotes. So enough of introductions about me. Now that I've wasted 2 minutes and 45 seconds, let's talk about YAML. So I thought long and hard about how I was going to do this demo, and I really wanted to be grassroots. Interesting enough, I'm going to use VS Code today. I don't use VS Code from day to day. I use the JetBrains suite of products, IntelliJ when I do Java, WebStorm when I do JavaScript, Goland when I do Go. And the reason why is because I don't like thinking. I am over 40 years old. I've used up a lot of brain power, and I just don't want to do that anymore. So Goland and WebStorm put me in a great place. But I'm going to use VS Code today because it's a very friendly environment for showing things. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into a development directory. And I have a directory here for demos, but I don't want to use that one. We're just going to make a directory called talks. And inside that directory, what is this event? Spring 1. Let's go to Spring 1. And I did create it before. But this is a whole new thing. There's literally nothing here. And let's actually make something. So what should we do? So here's the first problem with Kubernetes YAML. If you have nothing, which I literally have right now, how do you get to something? And you know what? There's a couple of ways, and I'm going to show you how I think about it, and then how others think about it, and then we'll just pick one of these ways. The first thing is, well, how do I create my YAML in Kubernetes? Well, what kind of YAML? Do you know? So if I go k API resources and word count dash L, in my particular cluster, I created just a local cluster here. And it has nothing in it. It has 55 types of resources in there. I can create 55 types of things. All right, well, now what do I want to create? Well, we want to run some software on our cluster. So we're going to use a workload API. So what does that mean? A deployment, stateful set, daemon set, pod. So there's four off the top of my head. Well, deployments are neat because you can do all the cool, you can do the cool scaling things, and you can create pods, and you can see all that. So well, let's use a deployment. And so we're going to create a deployment. And what kind of application? So this is another hard thing. So I'm going to cheat this out. This is pro tip number one. I will probably not count past this, but I will throw out a lot of pro tips. Here's the thing. The canonical source for Kubernetes and like workloads and deployments is nginx. How do I deploy nginx to my cluster? So what do? I go nginx deployment Kubernetes. And people are probably saying, what, Bryan? Why are you doing this? Well, this is very valid. The more senior developer, the better you are at finding things on Google. Notice I was able to find that right at the top. So what we can do, we could cut and paste this, and we could put this in a file, and then we could put it in our cluster. That is very, very valid. Or we could cut and paste this line and put it in our cluster. That's very, very valid. But we're going to try to do just a little bit better here. So in this case, we're just going to generate. We're going to generate some files using kube control. So first caveat, or first thing that I want to point out, kube control. This command. This is how we interact with our cluster. It's the Swiss utility knife of Kubernetes, for better or for worse. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. I've decided that KUBECTL is 7 characters and 6 characters too many. So I have an alias. So whenever you see me type K, it's the same thing. K is for Kubernetes. We probably can make a song about it, kind of like who said that? Was it Cookie Monster? C is for cookies. So K is for Kubernetes, which is good enough for me. So we're going to use Kubernetes. And what we can do with Kubernetes or kube control command, we can type K, create a deployment. And notice I already have this in here because I actually went through all this before. We're going to run this command here. And what this command is going to do is, if I put the endpoint in there, it's going to say, hey, kube control, create a deployment called my nginx, point it at an image called nginx, make 2 replicas, don't actually put it in the cluster and spit out YAML. Ooh. Oh, did I type that in wrong? K create deployment. Let me just make sure I type this right. Actually, let me do this a better way. K create deployment my nginx dash image equals nginx dash dry dash run dash o YAML. Oh no. I'm already failing at the first part of my thing, but don't worry about that. I have a plan. So let's create a service first. There we go. And there we go. So obviously you'll see something about me, and this is the fun part about live stuff, is that sometimes I mistype and I don't have someone here in my ear telling me what to do. So I went ahead and typed all the commands before so I could use my my history buffer to get me in the right place. So I've created a deployment and I've created a service. And just to let you know that that actually worked, they're both here. And what I'll do is I'll just open this whole thing here in VS Code. And I have this nice white theme for VS Code. Do not take this as a sign of weakness. I will outcode you. I like the light code when I'm talking to other people. I like the dark I like the dark code when I'm brooding to myself. You should probably take a lesson from that. That's how I think about it. So we haven't typed any YAML in, and we have two files. So we have a total of like 43 lines of code of YAML here. So let's actually go put these in the cluster. A apply -f here. And what you'll see is that I've applied these to my cluster. Spoiler, this is not a Kubernetes demonstration. I just want to let you, and I'm not going to walk you through all these pieces. Just assume that this apply command takes YAML and puts it in the cluster. And this -f says where you're taking it from. And I just said my local directory. So I have these things in the cluster. So if I git deployment, let's call deploy, you see that in there. But command line tools, I'm kind of lazy. I'm old school developer. I like to not type things I don't have to. So I wrote this thing called Octant, and it's at octant.dev. And what it is it's real-time display of what's in your cluster and a whole bunch of other things. So we'll use this when we want to look in the cluster. So we created this deployment, and we created these pods that are actually, we created the deployment and we created the service. The deployment created replica sets, and the replica sets created this pods. So pretty neat. But now hold on. So we did all this. We've gone, a legit 10 minutes, and all we've had is this one file. But the problem with YAML is everyone, you're not going to just have your initial set of YAML. You're going to want to make changes to it. So a good example would be for my case, my use case, and let me actually do some desktop management here. Let's get rid of that. There we go. I want to do a couple things to this YAML. The first thing I want to do is I want to change the replicas to like 4 or 5. My project actually requires a lot more compute than I can just get from one nginx, so I want to go up to 5. And then, second thing I want to do is in my department or wherever I work, we are required to label all of our objects that we create in a cluster with the environment they're going to run into. So I need to rely. This is all development. So we're going to label all my objects with an environment called, let's call it development. And the third thing that I want to do is I want to change my image, because you see I have a container called nginx, and in here I have nginx, but I don't want to run just nginx. What does that even mean? I want to run a specific version of nginx, and then I'll talk about that a little bit more about that in a bit. So we want to make all these changes. So like I said, the first thing I want to do, I want to have 5 replicas. Pretty simple. And then the second thing I want to do is I want to have my environment. So my environment is development. And what we'll do is we'll just put this bad boy in. And we got to put it in the labels for this. We got to put this in the spec selector match labels so we can actually know what this deployment owns. We have to put it in the template or the spec labels, because whenever we create pods, we got to have a good template for that. So development, I hope I'm spelling this right. There we go. And then we need to put it in one more place. So we need to put it in my service as well. And what we need to do is 2 places in here. So we want to put this in development, and we want to put it in the selector too. Because what will happen is the selector, so when data comes into the service, the service uses the selector to determine where the traffic goes. So what this will say is send this traffic to a pod that has this app and this env labels. So pretty cool, pretty straightforward. And let's go ahead and apply this. And I'm going to apply it. And what do we have here? Well, does anything look any different? Well, I don't know. Let's go check a look. So, oh, wow. So I have an env deployment going on right here. There's a problem here. It looks like my deployment, it says that it was configured, but really was it? Oh, I forgot to save the file. Let's go back and apply this again. And what we'll see as I applied this is something very interesting. I just changed some things here, and I get this error message. And what does this error message says? It says the deployment my nginx is invalid, spec.selector, invalid true. And then it says the label selector And then it basically says the field is mutable. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is that we can't change the label selector for deployment after we've created it. So I have to go k delete dash f, and then I can go k apply dash f. And now it'll be all happy. So what do we have here? We have our labels are showing up. We have our pods are the right number, and we have our service looks like it's all right too. And guess what? Problem solved. Ship it. But hold on, this doesn't work. This is pretty much where every single Kubernetes demonstration ends. And this is what they say. Oh, you just go ahead and do this and you add these and you change this file and you do this and you do that and things are fine. But actually, that's putting us in a worse place. It's like taking somebody to a gas station where they only have a gallon of gas and their car gets 15 miles a gallon. But then you actually, the way you take them takes 16 miles. You know, you're almost there, but still so far away. So let's talk about this next step of where we want to be. So what we've learned is that we probably don't want to edit our files directly. That seems like a bad idea. And this is my second pro tip is in Kubernetes with your YAML. If you take YAML from an external source, and I'm just going to say that this source is external in this case, what you need to do is you probably want to either edit a copy or figure out a way to change it. Never touch your pristine source. Keep it pristine. So that was kind of dope. Let's get rid of this and start over again. So the first tool I want to look at is called Customize. And Customize, and what Customize is oh, let's go to what Customize is. It says, oh, I apologize. I don't know how to remove this octo tree, but Customize lets you customize raw, template-free YAML files for multiple purposes, leaving the original YAML untouched and usable as is. Well, hold on. Second pro tip. That's exactly what it is. But Customize also targets Kubernetes. It understands it can patch Kubernetes style API objects. It's like make, in that what it does is declared in a file, and it's like said, is that it emits edited text. That was a lot of words. Let's actually see what this thing does. So what we'll do is we're decked to a directory. There's nothing in there. I'm going to do what we did before and do what we did deployment. And all I'm doing here is creating the files again, and we can go ahead and open them. And what with Customize, actually, let's go to my Customize. Am I in the right directory? I am in the right directory. Oh, I have a lot of files here. That's the problem. All right, I'm in my Customize directory. We've created these files. Now, how do we actually use Customize? So Customize has this init command, and what it did is it just generates a new file, and it's called a custom. It's called a customization. And what we do with this customization is we describe changes to our Kubernetes objects. And the neat part is that this thing really does understand it. So, like I was saying before, what we want to do is we want to change our replicas to 5. So what we can do is type some YAML in. Yeah, we're using YAML to configure YAML here. It's real meta. And we're going to go my nginx, because I believe that's the name of our workload here. And we're going to go count, and we're going to make it 5. And what I'm going to do, and that's all I need to do. So what I can now do is I can do customize build, and let's see here. Oh, that's not what my deployment was called. Yeah, it is called my nginx. Oh, if my rubber duck was here, it would have told me, "Hey, Bryan, you missed something." What I was attempting to do here was change the replicas, but I forgot a very important point. Like I said, we're doing this live. So what we need to do with Customize is we need to actually tell it what the what files are available. So I didn't do that piece. So now we're going to let's see what we've missed out here on. Am I in the right directory? less customization, and we'll have our resources and deployment. Did I call this thing the right thing? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I am definitely going to cheat here. We'll go up a directory and we'll go to demos and we'll go to Spring One and we'll go to customize and we'll look in this customization and we'll just copy and paste this out in case I didn't spell it right. And we'll move this here and we'll run our customize again. There we go. There must have been some kind of weird typo on that line. But what it did is it says, "Oh, I know what to do with this. This is direct. This is YAML. I know what to do about it." So it actually processed this file. And what I want to do is show you this one line. So inside of our source, we only had one replica, and Customize was able to change it. And there's a couple of other things that we can do with it as well. Before, remember, whenever I was changing all of my adding env deployments to everything, I had to add it in like 6 places. Well, with Customize, we can actually make that easier. So what it can do is it has this idea of common labels, and we can just say env. Oh, maybe that is the problem. There we go. Env deployment. And now, whenever I do a customized build, you'll notice that everywhere there was a label, it puts in deployment. So at the template, at the spec template metadata labels area, it put in a deployment. At the selector match labels, it put in a deployment. Notice it also at the regular labels, it put in deployment. But even in our service, in the selector, it put in a deployment. So that's pretty useful. 2 lines to do that. And then the final thing I think we want to do is we want to set up the images. And let me go ahead and do that. And just with Customize, since it's Kubernetes and knows a lot about Kubernetes, we can say that anytime you see a name, an image named nginx, set the tag to something else. And in this case, we're going to say every time that we see an image called nginx, we're going to set the tag to 1.119. So just going to build that to make sure it works. And I'm going to put this in a file called stage.yaml in my temp directory. And I'll tell you why in a second. Up until now, what we've been doing is using kube control. And we've been using kube control apply. And I think in a lot of cases, kube control apply, actually, let me make this one bigger. And then let me turn this into social mode. We have kube control apply, and we put things in the cluster. But the problem with kube control apply is it's not very smart, and that's by design. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be very smart. It could be smarter, but it isn't as smart as we want it to be. But there's this other tool from this project called Carbell that I work with called Cap. And let me show you about this thing. So we'll call it get cap.io. And what this thing does, it says cap is a CLI that does not require server-side components, elevated privileges, or any custom resources. It works well in RBAC constrained clusters. But the most important part is that deploy and view Kubernetes resources as applications. So basically, it's a more human-friendly deploy tool. And so how does this thing actually work? So if I go back to my cluster, notice there's nothing installed here in this namespace. So what I can do is I can go cap deploy, and I'll say my app is called my nginx, and we'll put the dash file temp stage. And let me actually show you this piece. So you notice that it already changed over here. Cap's already working ahead of us and saying, "Oh, there's an app coming. Let me put something here so I can actually capture that." But what it did is it's actually saying, "Hey, Bryan, you said you want to install these files. Did you really want to do this deployment and this service? If not, say no." And we're going to say no because it has another trick too. I can put on this diff changes flag here. And not only does it tell me that I had files in that particular directory, what I actually have is here's your changes and here's your diff. Bryan, we're putting this in the cluster whether you like it or not if you hit continue. And I'm going to say, yeah, I think I trust you. And let's see what happens. Pretty cool. Well, the neat part about Cap is now it keeps track of what I have installed in the cluster. So if I were to make any changes to any of these things, so a good example would be in my deployment right here. I've defined a pod template where I'm using nginx 1.19, and let's say I wanted to move that to let's say what's a good other one, Alpine. That's a valid image. So it's pretty much 1.19, but it's the Alpine backed container. And now, whenever I stage.yaml, so there we go. So I have this other command line that I'm going to use, which basically says customize build, put it in a stage, and then because I use fish shell, I use semicolon and then just deploy that. So it's the two commands we did before, but now together. And the neat part here, oh, I actually said dash Y. It told me exactly what it was going to do whenever it actually did this change. So that's a pretty neat feature. So let me actually change this again to 1, and let's take off the dash Y. Um, Notice that it's actually going through and telling me all the things that it's going to do. And the reason why it's showing me these all this diff is because I didn't delete the status object before I put it in the cluster initially. Not a big deal, but just wanted to show you that. So we can use cap, and it's doing these things and making my life easier. So we'll use cap for the rest of the time while I'm here. So let me hit save, and then we'll put this bad boy in the cluster, and it goes from 5 to 1. And now we've done all the things that I wanted to do, and we did them with customize, which is kind of cool. But the problem with finding with customize is that, a little bit of knowledge is great, but a lot of knowledge gets complex. Like in this, I have a YAML DSL where I have resources and replicas and common labels and images. And this is not even close to touching what's exactly in here. There's ways that we can generate config maps and secrets. We can have external plugins, and we can do and we can have variables, and we can do a lot of other pretty interesting things. But I want to show you another tool because I want to show you how I think about YAML, and I like how customized thinks. So, pro tip number 3: um, use tools where you can update your configuration in ways that are more approachable by humans. And the second part of rule 3 is maybe when we're applying things, maybe we should let people know what they can actually change. That's one problem that we're going to have here. If I have this customization file and I pass it down to a downstream developer, and I say and they ask me what they can change, how do they know? I would have to actually go through and maybe just say this is user serviceable. About this one, if you touch this, coming to your house, just to let people know how serious about this we should be. But I think we can do better than this. So the next tool that I want to talk about, let's go up. We're going to make a directory called KPT, and we're going to go into KPT, and we're going to copy up. We're going to cheat this time, and we're going to call it customize deployment to here and customize service to here. We're going to use this tool called kept. And interesting thing is KPT is this is another Google tool, pretty interesting. And I don't see enough people talking about this one. There's really good ideas in here. This tool is spelled KPT. My dinosaur brain or my lizard brain said this is called KPT. I thought that was a kind of dope name, to tell you the truth. But come to find out, whenever you go to the website, which you can't really find on Twitter, by the way, is it's called kept. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually try to show you how to do some of these things that I just talked about and kept. We got 16 more minutes, and I have 5 more things to talk about. So this will be fun. So let's look at kept. So same examples. We want to, you know what, for kept, we'll only look at changing, let's say the replicas and maybe the tag. We won't look at the labels right now, just for to keep everything happy here. So let's actually figure out what we have here. So we're in this directory. Kept also has an initialization file too. So we can go kept package init. And what I'm doing here is I'm just tagging this thing with my domain and I'm calling it nginx and I'm describing it as nginx. Why do I like this? Well, more metadata about your projects is never bad. And there's a kept file here. And it actually, it's kind of like the customization file. Funny thing enough is it's written by the same people. But it's going to give us some really dope features. And let me show you these features one by one. The first feature that I really like from this is kept config tree. And what this does is it shows you what you have. Kind of dope. What do I have in this directory? I shouldn't have to edit files to know what's in this directory. Another thing that it will do is it can cat the files. And this is not just the files on the file system itself. This is the files as processed by kept. So if we actually make changes to the files through our configuration, the cat file will actually show it to you. So let's make a configuration. So I'm going to violate my rule by modifying the pristine source here because it's my demo and I'll do what I want. But let me show you a neat part about what thing that kept can do. So we have kept -set, and I'm just putting this little annotation in here, and I'll tell you about what it is in a second. With kept, what I can do is I can annotate lines in my YAML file, and then I can actually use kept to change those later. So what does that mean? So I annotated this line right here as a replicas. So it's my replicas. Now what I can do is I can go kept config create setter. So I ran this command. So kept config create setter in my local directory. We'll call it replicas. We'll make it 4, and we'll say the description is replica count, and it's an integer. That's super powerful. One, we have a description. It's not just a thing anymore, and it actually is the replica count. And we could actually say, hey, do not touch, or we could put something else there. And the next part is this here. Is there's type integer. We actually are saying what it actually is. So let me show you how this actually works. So if I go kpt config set, now I want to change the replicas and I want to change them to foo. Oops, did I type this? Config set. So if I type kept config set, my local directory replicas foo, it's going to be like, hey, bro, it don't work. You gave me a string. I wanted an integer. And I think that's great because guess what humans do? The easiest and most wrong thing possible at any given time. So now if I set it to 5, I get that. So if I go back and cat my configuration and I go back way up to here to replicas, it's in here, it's fixed in here. It's also fixed, it actually also changes it in the file. Another thing I like about this is watch this file real quick. So kept changes the file. I love this idea where, yeah, I'd say pristine source. But I think there's more research we need to do around this, but this is way closer than most other projects are to this. So now we can actually change this. And I think that's pretty cool. But I'm not done showing you things you probably have never seen before. So let me show you something else. So we're going to make another directory. So I think kept is a great solution. It's not the only solution. And I think there's different ways of looking about this. Before I went and looked at this cap project, and it's part of Carvel. There's another project in here called YTT made by coworkers of mine. And what YTT is this a templating language that is it's a Pythonic templating language for YAML. Yeah, wow, brain here on that one. That's crazy. But let me show you what it looks like. And then we'll make a quick example to show you what kind of neat things you can do. What YTT allows you to do is basically introduce macros for YAML. And you're going to say, hey, Bryan, why would I want to do that? And I want to say this. All the coolest languages, the coolest operating system ever, Emacs, is basically all macro based. All the cool things at the bottom are macros. And the good thing is that people realize that macros aren't good UX, so they create better create better abstractions on top of those macros, but the macros allow us to get all the neat parts in here. And I think YTT is the core of a lot of neat parts. And I'll show you this real quick of what I mean. So in this example, right here, we can define functions. Dope. We can actually call those functions. We have loops in here, and people are saying, Bryan, that's crazy. But for someone who is maintaining some complex configuration, this is actually a great idea. It's way better than templating. We'll talk about that in a second too. So let's see if we can actually make this work in our project. So I'll go make dir YTT, cd YTT, copy, customize service to here, and we'll copy deployment to here as well. So what can we do with this? Well, let me show you the nickel tour of YTT as I see it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to our configuration, and we'll go here to YTT, and we'll go to our deployment, and we want to change the replicas. And I'll explain this in a second. What I'm doing, I'm actually creating this macro here that says replace this value with something called replicas. We haven't defined it yet. Let's go ahead and define that thing. So we'll make a file here called values.yaml, and in there we'll go and we'll put replicas 4. 4. Now, what does this mean? I've declared, so according to YTT parlance, and I'm not going deep into YTT here, I'm basically saying that this object is a values object. So data, values, replicas. Data, values, replicas. This will allow me to actually see this inside of my app. So what I can do is whenever I can go YTT-F, oops. Oh, let me actually put that let me actually type this in correctly. Doop, 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 doop. We got to actually define that we're loading data. YTT dash data slash data, and we'll go like that. Oh no. Let's see. Replit. Oh gosh. VS Code is killing me today. There we go. So notice whenever I look at my replicas, I set it to 4, and it's basically set off this file. This is kind of dope, like I was saying before, that we can explicitly say, because this is YAML, we can actually put the comments in there. We can't actually set the type, but I have an answer for that too, that I will talk about. I won't show you because we're going to run out of time. But so I changed this to, let's say I changed it to 5. So notice once again, I changed it to 5. But we can do better, because remember I said we should not touch our source. Another thing that YTT can do is it can not only change things directly, but it has this concept of overlays. So we're going to create this overlay here, and this is, like I said, this is the nickel tour. And on the nickel tour, I don't use all the words, but I want to show you some of the power of YTT, because I want more people to actually think about this kind of software. So what I've done is I've said this file is an overlay, basically. And I'm making this overlay because I want to overlay values over YAML. And I want to go match. And I want to say, and I'm getting into the weeds, but I'm going to create this document here, and I'm going to change it to, like, say, replicas 7. So what I'm doing is I'm creating this overlay. I want to overlay this document, the spec replica 7, over another document. And how do I actually figure that out? Well, the neat thing here is I can actually do this. I can use the subset command, and I can say, find something that has a metadata with name and my nginx. And what this is going to do now is, beep, nope. Let me see. I'm going to make this smaller. All right. Let's make sure I got in all the things here. Overlay match by overlay equals subset. Now, what I'm going to do is get rid of of this, and I'm going to put this back to like 1. So in my overlays file, line 3, I have some kind of typo here, and I'm not quite sure what it is. But like I said, I am so used to having typos. I always have a method out. So let me look at this overlay match overlay.subset metadata, and this closes that one. This closes this. So we'll try it one more time, and if it doesn't work, we will move on. And we'll say deployment, and we'll say overlay. Yeah, I'm missing something in my configuration, but that's fine. But I can actually do overlays in YTT. So that is just some of the thoughts. So the pro tip that comes out of there is we actually haven't figured out the best way to do all the things that we want to do. So for the end part of this, let me actually talk about a more perfect world. So you're going to notice that in this conversation, 100%, I did not talk about Helm. So let me actually go to some Helm, and I want to show you some things about. And we're going to go to Bitnami/charts, Bitnami charts here real quick. And then we're going to go look down in here, and we're going to go find the nginx thing that I know is in here. And so the first part is that, you know what Helm got right? Helm got this idea of having your values all laid out like this. They got it right. The problem is that, let's say for pod annotations, I know that's in here. What is this? Well, it looks like it's an object. Well, we kind of have to do that to make it valid YAML. But what about replica count? We know intuitively that it's a number of replicas to deploy because of the name. But we can't actually we can't actually know that this is a changeable piece, or that it should be changed, or that it should be an integer, unless we did some other things. So I think that what we need to do is we need to move past this idea of templates and templating files, and we need to move into things that understand YAML more. And the reason why I showed kept and the reason why I showed YTT is I think the solution is going to be in one of them. And then what we need to do is we need to bring these tools to the forefront to make them easier to use. So command line tools are great because they can be ran in a couple different ways. If you need an editor to make your change, it's probably not the right answer. But here's the thing that I haven't seen anyone do. What about the web browser? Notice that I've done VS Code is a web browser. Spent a lot of time in the underpinnings of VS Code. It's a web browser, monocode editor. I have embedded it in websites. It's an editor and a web page. This is a web page. Why don't we have more tools that meet people where they are? So a good example now is something that I'm working on, and I might open source it, or I might not, because who knows? Can we make better tools? So let me make this all the way full screen because this is going to be kind of gnarly. Um, can we make tools that understand our YAML better? So let me show you exactly where I'm coming from right here. So this is just a random old manifest that I have on GitHub's Gist. So I'll just submit that. Oh, look at that, my nginx. Once again, it's pretty much the same stuff we had before. I can now hover and click on it. This could be a desktop application, but I just have it in a web browser. It's running on Netlify somewhere. But here's the neat part about this. So I have this. VS Code gave you the ability to hover in their browser or Kubernetes. Well, why don't other tools have it too? You know, this is actually pretty trivial to put in an application. And yeah, you're catching a little bit of a bug where it's in here twice. But that's because I was working on something before this talk that I will go to after this talk. But also, what can I do? Well, what if I wanted to actually change the name of something? So now I clicked on it. And what it did is it told me all this information about it. It told me where I clicked on it. It told me what it is. It told me that it knows it's a string. So wouldn't it be kind of dope that if I could change this and say, hey, this is my app name, and have the name of that app. And we'll just say that the source, which is probably just the value, this is now the app name. And now we can do things like apply like VS Code's code lens right here in the browser. So now we can annotate these things so people can visually see their configurations. And then what if we could go to another whole file and say, all right, I want to annotate this one too, but I don't want to add, I want to choose a value. And we'll choose the existing value because it's a string. And we'll put this in here. I'll reload this page. And guess what? It's in here too. And now we can generate configurations based on this. And now we have tools that work for people on the levels that people work. Some people do work at CLIs. Some people like that world. But a lot of the world that gets a lot of things done doesn't work that way. So how can we think outside of these boxes? And the reason that I went through all those steps earlier, I wish I could have 2 hours to really go deep on some of these things, is to show you that um, going from editing to a DSL to more generalizable things like things that can do configuration or that can do generators or things that can do transforms are inherently more valuable. And then if you get down to this point where you have tools that work in the way that we work, now we get the real value. This is the real value of Kubernetes, the value of building platforms that we can actually make crazy platforms on. And I want to show you one final thing because I think this is pretty neat. Um, this is a tool that I want to put up, and I'm over my artificial time limit of going to 10 minutes, but I'm going to go another 2 minutes here just to show you something pretty dope. So I went the other day and I found the cert manager. I found the cert manager YAML, and I'm just going to link this bad boy. It's long. I'm not going to say it's a meg. Actually, curl dash l that into foo.txt. All right, I didn't want to say it's a meg, but it's 1.2 megs. So it's a lot of file. So we're going to take this URL, and what we're going to do is we're going to put it in my little fancy tool that I write in nights and weekends when I'm bored. And I'm going to submit this. And it's going to hang out for a second. But here's something neat. If all of our web tools, like all of our tools were approach Kubernetes and we got all this random YAML, what if it broke it down into what it was? So this is all the files in here. Now I don't have 1.2 megs of YAML. What I have is I have service accounts, and I have cluster roles, and I have CRDs, and I have a mutating webhook with a little tiny icon for some reason. I don't know why that is. But this is where it gets interesting. So now I want to see, well, what kind of workloads does this thing do? Oh, it has 3. And I can actually click on this, and now I can look through this and say, oh, this is what this does. And why don't we have tools at this level? This is the level we need to work out. Having more access for storage providers and networking is cool if you're an infra person. But guess what? The majority of the people are app people. This is why things like Spring and .NET and things like this are so important, because more people spend more time and more effort at this level. We need to approach people in this way. So I went 45 minutes to basically come here. We are not to the point where we need to be on our tools. We need to think at higher levels. We need to make tools for humans. And if you want to get down to the science of this, is go to Google and then search for Marley Marl science, and then go listen to the first verse of that, and you'll see where I'm coming from. I'm not science as Mr. Wizard science, not Bill Nye science. This is dropping science like all the old school rappers did. And that's what I've done here for the last 47 minutes now. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing because I've been talking for way too long. So, Mr. Moderator dude, what's up? All right. Well, if they don't come in here, I'm going to start telling jokes.
Thank you so much, Bryan. I love watching when Bryan does live demos because not only does it reaffirm that he is an actual superhero, but also that he's human and will occasionally make typos and mistakes just like the rest of us. And Bryan did finish early and has plenty of time for Q&A. So please remember to jump over to his Q&A Zoom link, which I think you'll find in his Slack channel. And that is also it for me today. I am finishing up my MC duties. Tiffany Jerningen will be taking over, and I will see you again bright and early tomorrow morning.